Hi, Grove Learners. It's Mrs. Celia, and I have a sequel to Walter the Farting Dog. It's Rough Weather Ahead for Walter the Farting Dog. It's by William Kotzwinkle, Glenn Murray, and Elizabeth Gundy, illustrated by Audrey Coleman. Our publisher is Dalton Children's Books. Here's our title page. Rough Weather Ahead for Walter the Farting Dog, illustrated by Audrey Coleman. For everyone who's ever felt misjudged or misunderstood. Professor Compressor knocked on the door. I understand your dog has a farting disorder. It's not a disorder, said Betty and Billy. Yes, it is, shouted Father. Come on in. Professor Compressor said, I've made a lifelong study of animal gas. He examined Walter, gently poking around his stomach. You'd better be careful, said Father. He farts when you do that. He won't fart at me, will you, Walter? Walter farted. Professor Compressor staggered backward, waving his gas meter. 10.7! That's the highest I've ever recorded. What a remarkable animal! Walter was pleased to be called remarkable. He liked Professor Compressor, and he licked his hand. You're a good dog, Walter, said Professor Compressor, and I'm going to help you. He poked around some more, as if it's his digestion that causes such powerful farts. We don't mind, Betty said, and Billy. Yes, we do, said Mother. Years of research have led me to this special formula, said Professor Compressor. Powders and potions appeared from his pockets, and he plugged in a gleaming machine. Mix it in my compressotron and serve it fresh 3 times a day. We're so grateful, said Mother. So 3 times a day, Mother mixes special formula in the compressotron. His farts aren't as bad, said Billy hopefully. They're worse than ever, said Father. Your father is right, said Mother. That night, Father decided to mix the formula himself. He examined the powders carefully. More of this, he decided, less of this, and a lot more of that. Father sniffed the new mixture and smiled. That's better. Tastes pretty good, said Walter to himself, and he ate faithfully every day. It's working, cried Mother. The air smells so fresh. Hooray, said Betty. Walter was so pleased, too. Everyone was smiling. No one ran away when he came into the room. Father even hugged him. However, inside, Walter's gas was building up slowly. That dog's getting fat, said Father. But it wasn't fat. It was farts. Waiting to be set free. Professor Compressor's mixture and Father's expert touch were turning Walter into a blimp. Walter began taking strange little bounces when he walked across the room. One evening, he floated over Father's chair. Great jump, Walter, said Billy. But it wasn't a jump. It was gas. The following evening, Billy and Betty were in their room doing homework. Billy said, Betty, look outside. Betty and Billy raced out of the house. Walter was floating over the trees. Walter, come down, cried Betty, but Walter couldn't come down. He knew the problem was gas. He knew the solution was farting. He sneezed. He pressed his belly with his paws. He twisted into a knot. Nothing. He floated all night long. When morning came, he was high above the world. Mommy, said a little girl, look at that balloon. It's lost, said the little girl's mother. It will never come back. Walter floated for days. He floated over green hills and blue rivers. He floated over skyscrapers and farms. He floated in the dark and in the rain. He felt lonely and cold. He went whichever way the wind carried him. Suddenly the wind grew much stronger and he wasn't alone any longer. The air around him was filled with the flutter of tiny frozen wings. Millions of butterflies were caught in the freezing windstorm. They had been on their way to their winter home when the storm took them by surprise. Poor butterflies, said Walter to himself. The wind was driving them down toward the frozen lake below. I've got to help them, thought Walter. He knew he had it in him. If he could just get it out. He grunted, he groaned, he pressed. He looked into their tiny insect faces. It was now or never. He let it rip. A blast of warm gas lifted the butterflies out of their dive. It melted the ice on their wings. It carried them to the far side of a mountain where the sun was shining. They touched down in a field of wildflowers. A forest ranger in his tower grabbed his two-way radio. I think those butterflies are going to be okay. Out of gas, Walter went down like a rocket. He splashed into a pond and doggy paddled to the shore. He shook himself dry, then he sniffed the air, turned around, and started the long walk home. He'd gone only a little way when the ranger pulled up in his Jeep. Can I give you a lift, Wonder Dog? Somebody sent us a big package, said Mother, looking out the window. It's not a package, cried Billy. It's Walter. See, said Father. I told you he'd find his way home. Oh, Walter, said Betty, we're so glad you're back. Not half as glad as we are, said the delivery man. Wonder Dog saves butterflies.